Imagine a single individual sitting in the highest office of the land, wielding the power to reshape the nation's economic ties with the world, altering the flow of goods, jobs, and money with the stroke of a pen. This is not just a hypothetical scenario, but a reality that has tested the very foundations of American democracy. Picture this happening without a single vote from Congress, the body traditionally entrusted with the power to regulate commerce and levy taxes. The halls of Congress, silent and empty, as monumental decisions are made elsewhere. This unprecedented situation unfolded during the Trump administration, when the president's aggressive use of tariffs on foreign goods sent shockwaves through global markets and ignited a landmark Supreme Court case that would challenge the limits of executive authority. At the heart of the legal battle was a fundamental question: can the president, by simply declaring a trade emergency, unilaterally impose sweeping taxes on imports, sidestepping the checks and balances designed by the Constitution? The case reached the Supreme Court after years of fierce legal battles, as importers, business owners, and trade groups argued that these tariffs represented an unconstitutional overreach of executive power, threatening their livelihoods and the rule of law. Trump's tariffs, justified under the banner of national security, were seen by critics as a pretext to bypass Congress's exclusive authority over trade policy, raising fears about the erosion of legislative oversight. With billions of dollars at stake and the very structure of American governance hanging in the balance, businesses and economists called for a return to predictable, congressionally sanctioned trade policy, warning of chaos and uncertainty if executive power went unchecked. Legal experts, scholars, and policymakers watched the proceedings closely, fully aware that the Supreme Court's ruling would set a powerful precedent, either reinforcing the separation of powers or opening the door to greater presidential control over economic policy. The outcome of this case would not only determine the fate of billions in tariffs but also shape the future balance of power in Washington, either emboldening future presidents to act unilaterally or reaffirming Congress's primary constitutional role in matters of trade and taxation for generations to come. The legal battle, American Institute for International Steel versus United States, consolidated lawsuits from businesses hit by tariffs imposed under Section 232 and the IEEPA. Plaintiffs argued the president had stretched national security to cover economic competition, usurping Congress's exclusive power. The Trump administration's 2018 tariffs on steel, aluminum, and billions in goods from China marked a sharp break from decades of trade liberalization. The Supreme Court had to decide: did Congress's statutes truly allow such sweeping executive action, or had the president crossed into legislative territory? The justices faced a complex web of statutory and constitutional questions, weighing broad emergency powers against Congress's authority over commerce. The outcome would reshape American trade policy and the balance of power for years to come. The Supreme Court heard sharply divided arguments about the scope of presidential power. Government lawyers claimed Congress gave the president broad latitude under IEPA to address unusual and extraordinary threats, including economic ones. Challengers argued IEPA was for genuine emergencies, not routine trade deficits, and that using it for tariffs usurped Congress's power to tax. Many justices seemed skeptical that a trade deficit could trigger emergency powers, hinting at concerns over unchecked executive authority. The government cited past use of IEPA for targeted sanctions, but challengers countered those were specific, not broad-based taxes. The distinction between targeted sanctions and sweeping tariffs became central to the debate. The court's decision would define the limits of emergency economic powers. The IEPA, passed in 1977, was the Trump administration's legal foundation for tariffs. The administration argued chronic trade deficits and unfair practices justified emergency action under IEPA. Plaintiffs countered that IEPA was meant for foreign policy crises, not for overhauling trade policy or imposing broad taxes. Several justices questioned whether a trade deficit could ever be a national emergency, warning this logic could give presidents unlimited tariff power. The court had to decide: would it accept a broad definition of national security threat, or side with a narrower, more traditional view? A ruling for the government would expand presidential power. A ruling against would constrain it. The court ultimately chose to limit the executive's use of IEPA for broad economic policy. In a landmark 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court struck down Trump's sweeping tariff plan. Chief Justice Roberts wrote that a general trade deficit is not an unusual and extraordinary threat under IEPA, invalidating billions in tariffs. Trump condemned the ruling, vowing to seek new legislative authority if re-elected. The majority opinion emphasized Congress's constitutional role in trade and taxation, warning against executive overreach. The decision was a major victory for businesses who argued the tariff were an illegal tax. Dissenting justices argued the president deserves deference on national security, but the majority held firm. The ruling stands as a definitive check on presidential power in trade. The era of unilateral tariff wars is over, at least for now. The Supreme Court's landmark decision marks a turning point that will send shockwaves throughout the entire U.S. economy, affecting businesses, workers, and consumers alike. The ruling is already being called historic by legal experts and economists, as its impact will be felt far beyond the courtroom. Effective immediately, the collection of tariffs on a wide range of imported goods comes to a halt. This move provides much-needed relief to importers who have struggled with rising costs for years. As a result, consumers may soon notice lower prices on everyday products, from electronics to groceries, as the cost savings are passed down the supply chain. Many economists predict that the ruling will help cool persistent inflation, which has been a major concern for households and policymakers. With fewer trade barriers, businesses will have more capital to invest in growth, innovation, and hiring, potentially boosting the overall economy. Small and medium-sized businesses, which were hit hardest by the tariffs, now have a chance to expand their operations and bring on new employees. For many entrepreneurs, this decision could mean the difference between survival and closure. However, not everyone will benefit. Domestic industries that were once shielded by tariffs, such as steel and aluminum manufacturing, now face renewed foreign competition. This could lead to job losses and plant closures in some sectors, raising concerns among workers and local communities. The Supreme Court's decision highlights the complex nature of trade policy, where there are always both winners and losers. The debate over how to balance global competition with protecting American jobs is far from over. Now, a new and pressing question looms. What will happen to the estimated $1 trillion in tariffs that have already been collected by the government over the years? The court's decision opens the door for importers to seek refunds on past tariff payments, creating a massive administrative and budgetary challenge for federal agencies. Processing these claims could take months if not years, and will require significant resources. If a large-scale refund is issued, it could provide a major stimulus for businesses, giving them extra cash to invest or hire. However, managing this process will put federal agencies to the test, as they work to ensure fairness and prevent fraud. The end of the tariff era brings both relief and new complexity. While many celebrate the promise of lower prices and economic growth, others brace for the challenges ahead. One thing is certain, this decision marks the beginning of a new chapter in America's economic story. With the tariffs struck down, attention turns to refunding billions collected since 2018. Importers argue the process should be straightforward, with digital records detailing every payment. But trade experts warn the sheer volume and complexity of transactions will overwhelm government agencies. Millions of claims, fluctuating tariff rates, and verification requirements could create bureaucratic bottlenecks and long delays. The U.S. Treasury faces the unprecedented challenge of refunding up to $1 trillion, potentially via direct payments or tax credits. Policymakers must balance swift relief for businesses with the impact on the federal budget. Will refunds be automatic, or must businesses file claims? Small firms may struggle with a complex process. Advocacy groups demand a streamlined, accessible system for all importers. The design of the refund process will determine how quickly businesses see relief. The stakes are high for both the economy and government finances. The Supreme Court's recent ruling marks a turning point, restoring much-needed stability for American businesses that rely on complex global supply chains. For years, uncertainty around tariffs and trade policy has cast a shadow over the ability of companies to plan for the future. Years of unpredictable tariff changes made long-term planning nearly impossible. Companies were forced to hold back on investments, delay hiring, and rethink expansion plans. Now, with a clearer legal framework, businesses can invest and grow with greater confidence, knowing the rules won't change overnight. Small and medium-sized firms, which were often the hardest hit by sudden tariff hikes, stand to benefit the most from potential refunds and lower costs. These businesses, the backbone of the American economy, can now redirect resources toward hiring, innovation, and serving their communities. Manufacturers and retailers will see production costs drop, making American-made goods more competitive both at home and abroad. This could lead to lower prices for consumers, increased exports, and a stronger position in the global marketplace. Domestic producers who once benefited from tariff protections may face new challenges, but the broader economy stands to gain from a more predictable, rules-based approach to trade. This stability encourages investment and job creation across multiple sectors. The decision also reaffirms a fundamental principle that broad economic policy should be set by Congress, reflecting the will of the people rather than by executive order alone. This strengthens the checks and balances at the heart of American democracy. While debates over free trade and protectionism will undoubtedly continue, the legal framework is now clearer, providing a more stable environment for business leaders and policymakers to navigate the future. With this clarity, thousands of companies, large and small, can focus on what they do best: innovating, growing, and creating jobs, rather than bracing for sudden policy shifts that disrupt their operations. For American business, clarity and predictability are the new watchwords, paving the way for a more resilient and prosperous future. The Supreme Court's decision is more than the end of a tariff policy. It's a reassertion of constitutional balance. By checking the executive's use of emergency powers, the court reaffirmed Congress's authority over trade and taxation. Future presidents will face stricter limits on unilateral economic action, likely leading to more collaboration with Congress. America's trading partners and businesses can expect a more stable, predictable policy environment. The case underscores the judiciary's vital role in policing the boundaries between branches of government. The decision will be studied as a turning point in the debate over presidential power. The ruling provides immediate relief to businesses and sets a precedent for future economic policymaking. As the nation moves forward, the challenge remains, balancing decisive leadership with constitutional checks and deliberation.